Alright, so the idea is to drop that shelf by one peg. And we did that here, which is going to create this effect across the top, where figures that are about to be opened can be fully displayed, and then once they're displayed, once they're taken off of here, we will have this cool display of amazing artwork across the entire top shelf. This is really solid. I think it'll be really cool. It needs to be done on this side as well. So, in order to drop each one of these one peg down, one peg down, one peg down, all the way down, I'd like to start at the bottom and work my way up, which means we're going to have to talk about the books and what books happen to be staying and what books happen to be going. That's today. So this process saw some work earlier, back when we very first started this entire thing, when we lined up all the books and we put them across the bottom. We did a first impression type of thing across a couple of books where we said, this is why I keep this is why I get rid of this, and this is what it means to me, and so on and so forth. And it really needs to be re-examined. I came across a bit of a realization. And it may seem ridiculous, but stay with me here. What is the value of a collection? That it means something to you, right? I've talked about this many, many times, that your collection should reflect on you almost like a museum to yourself. These are things that mean something to you, whether you've been influenced by them directly, or whether it's something that you have a passion for. Case in point, Mega Man. I love Mega Man. I absolutely love Mega Man. In fact, not too long ago at all, in fact, it was earlier this year, I went through the Mega Man Legacy Collection again. Yeah, that's a key word, again. And I beat the entire thing, original run Mega Man games. And then they released the Wily Wars on the Switch for the Sega system thing they do, and I was like, holy crap, and I sat down and I beat all three of those. So to say that Mega Man is still not only something that I really enjoy, but something that I still play, that's 100%. And I love original Mega Man. I just think it's fantastic. In fact, years ago, it was one of the earlier fandoms that I actually dove into and started to understand little things about it. That there was a bigger story at large other than Jump a Shoot Man. Everybody's heard that joke, Ego Raptor. But you get the idea. And it was because of that we had I want to say we had an internet provider. I can't remember what it was, but the internet provider that we had, that's where you made your name and things like that. I think it was AOL, in all honesty. And at the time, I had a very different username. Then we got on this new thing, and we were all going to make Gmails, and all of a sudden it was, what's your username going to be? And I didn't know. My dad was setting the stuff up. That's how long ago this was. And he comes and he says, hey man, I need something. We got to set up a name. And I'm like, you know what? ReploidBill. And that's where it came from. It was no deeper than that. I was huge into Mega Man. I played Mega Man games all the time. I was good at Mega Man games. I just loved Mega Man, and I loved seeing him appear in other properties at the time, and so I was like, that's it, that's what we're doing. Mega Man, I'm going to be Mega Man, but I can't, I'm not going to be Mega Man or Mega Guy or something like that. I still got to have my own identity in my name. Mega Man's a Reploid, that's a living machine. As Captain Picard put it, we are all in our own right a type of machine. And it just seemed right at the time, and I was like, ReploidBill, and that name stuck forever. I'm still using it today. I've considered a couple of different times changing that name, but why? It works. Well, kicking off that same idea that Link is something I love, something that I understand, something that I enjoy. He goes on the gaming shelf. He makes a lot of sense. Books. And I actually think this is important. This is one that for some reason slipped by me, and I never thought too deeply about it until very recently. What is the value of a story to you? One, that it stays with you forever. It has an impact that actually changes somewhat your personality, maybe, even in a way. Or it develops something about who you are, or it says something about you. Or it gives you this, it teaches you something about story structure, or just, it really catches your attention. It's something that you're not going to forget. And two, the value of a story is in reading or telling it, right? Otherwise, stories we never tell are no longer really a part of us. They die off. And if you're never going to read a book again, ever again, what's the point of holding on to it, right? It was this that got me thinking it might be time to reevaluate all of this. Is any of this a story, in general, that I would ever read again, that I would ever care again? And so, it's time to break down these books and figure out what stays and what goes. So let's do that. I'm going to pick a couple of these books that I think it's time for it to go, and we'll talk about it. Okay, so going across the shelf, first off, we have the all-new X-Men in the back here. That's a franchise of books that's definitely going to stay. Next, we have the Spider-Man, early Spider-Man stuff, and I actually tend to like these a lot, and every now and then do go back to reference or interest myself in said stories. We have another set of Spider-Man run, which I actually intend to keep. We have this, the Avengers vs. X-Men, which I enjoy quite a bit. And then going on from there, these are a run of the Batgirl DC 52 books, which I enjoy quite a bit, and they're not going anywhere. This is a crumpled up piece of paper, which we can get rid of. This here is the Batman, this is that Batman Damned. And this is the original book, which has Batman's whanger. Most people probably remember this. In fact, I did a video about it a long time ago where I talked about a couple of things. One, I talked about the fact that Batman can be an adult book. There's nothing wrong with that. And I talked about the fact that superheroes, I did a couple of videos on this. I talked about the fact that I didn't understand why everybody was up in arms that we got to see Batman's whanger. And then I also talked about the fact that superheroes in some books have definitely grown up, and they're doing grown-up things, even as far as having sex and being involved in adult situations. And I didn't quite understand why the outrage was there. That is the original uncensored book, and I'm keeping it as kind of a reminder as to just how ridiculously sensitive everybody was to the idea. Because that book kind of blows my mind. When I read it, it's just an adult book, and it's no different than any other film I've ever seen in my entire life with a Jean-Claude Van Damme where I've seen his naked butt cheeks. Whatever. Remember in the movie 28 Days Later? I saw that guy's wanger. So what? So what? Like, it floored me, and it still floors me to this day that this was such a big deal, because we allow it in things like movies and other media. If it's labeled as adult, we expect certain adult things, and we don't expect it to shy away from certain adult situations, right? But then, comic books are in this weird place where they're still trying desperately to grow up. while being pulled back down to the status quo that they are made for kids. And every time they claw their way up a little bit into more adult material, they fall back down. Now, is Naked Wanger, does that signify mature adult content? It depends on how you're talking. Because in some cases, just like when you watch Dragon Ball Z and they have the out-of-body experiences and whatnot, and Vegeta appears naked, you don't see anything necessarily. I think you see his butt cheeks or something like that, but who cares? What I'm getting at is the fact that in some symbolic natures, yes, nudity is graphically effective in pushing a story towards the adult medium. And if Batman Damned is already doing some of the other storytelling stuff that it's doing, then showcasing a broken man at his most vulnerable point, naked, cold, on the floor, scared, broken, yeah, I think that in a way, the storytellers were right to push the narrative as far as they could. And also, because it was the first of them trying to break into, these are superheroes, the ones you grew up with, now being told in a new adult form. These are adult stories. To push the limit in book one and say, look guys, things are going to happen in these books. It's a silhouette of his Wanger. And that silhouette shows beyond the shadow of a doubt that we are moving in this direction now. This is what we're doing. Now, even if the next 5 books have no nudity at all because the story doesn't call for it, book 1 told you this is now adult media with adult stuff, and adult things are going to happen. And yes, these adult things can go as far as nudity. Everything is on the table. Now, if this is the kind of thing you're looking to see, jump on board. That, I believe, was the intention, was to go full bear, book 1, and tell you there will be murder, there will be blood, there will be nudity, there will be adult content, there will be adult situations, there will be mass maturity, and if you aren't adult enough to deal with it, these books are not for you. But then there was outcry, and they pulled the book, they edited the book, and they gave up on the whole process. And I keep that book, and sometimes even go back and read it as a reminder of the step we almost took to grow up a property. And how it was halted so brutally and so quickly. That's why we keep that book. So going on from that, we have Batman Nightfall, and I do keep all 3 of these. I think this is an absolute amazing run of storytelling. And I did enjoy it very much. I do sometimes go back to it. These are the Court of Owls, which are some of my favorite villains ever at this point. This is Batman Earth 1. This is the first one. I would like to get the other ones. This right here is the Batman TMNT, which I actually thought was done so much better than I ever expected, and that's the reason I keep it. And now we come to the first book that we're going to get rid of. Maybe if this was a different time. Maybe if it was a different time in a different part of my comic book reading life, this would be something that would floor me. And it would make me say, I have to read this again and again and again and again and again. It's not that it was a bad story. It's really not. And maybe, just to be 100%, I should read through it one more time to guarantee whether or not it needs to leave. But I'm thinking that this book is probably gone. See, The Three Jokers was something that was built up when Rebirth first hit, and it made me go, oh crap, what are they about to do? And then I got this, and I did read it. And for what it's worth, I remember enjoying it, but it's nothing more than just another Batman story. I don't think it really broke ground. I don't think it revolutionized anything. I don't think it changed my opinion on anything. I don't think it pushed the narrative or made me go, oh my God, or like opened up the possibility of the world to me. And I don't think it really pushed development of characters in any way necessarily, in any ways that's going to matter. Like, it took Barbara, who's already an absolute roller coaster at this point. I showcased that I'm keeping the Batgirl DC 52 first run. The new 52 first run was my favorite Batgirl. I'm telling you, I loved her. Coming back out of the chair, dealing with the insecurities of whether or not she could do this thing again, the lingering fear, the post-traumatic stress disorder that would follow her as she went through her what she was deciding to do, what she was deciding to go back to. All of these things meant a lot to me in terms of stuff like that, developing Barbara Gordon. Only for us to take that Batgirl and produce a book that just felt like Batman 66 all of a sudden. Like, it just lost all the charm that I thought that it had, all the grit that I thought that it was running with, and all the mature content that I thought I was getting. And I read those first couple books where she went to that purple costume, and like she's taking selfies and doing, just, it bothered me really bad. It didn't feel right. It felt like a complete tonal shift, a complete alteration of the character. And if that's what it was meant to be, then that's fine. As I hate to say it, because I really do hate this term, I guess it's not my Batgirl. But I guess, in a way, I'm not assaulting the idea that you might like that Batgirl. If that's your Batgirl, that's fine. It honestly is. Comic books are a malleable property through and through. Let's be honest about how often they change. So if we're going to give it that concept, we are going to come across the point where I'm going to say things like, this is my Batgirl. This is the one I identify with. It's the one that I wish I saw more of. This is your Batgirl. And as long as I can keep that term stated to not a man-child crying, it's not my Batman, it's not my Star Trek, that kind of thing, that's fine. I think there is room to claim this is my thing, this is your thing, and that just like the He-Man toys that have been showing up all over the collection, I view the property differently than some other people. I'm very new to it, and I'm excited about different things that I find. And to me, it's a swords and sorcery toy line, first and foremost. The designs are cool and open for interpretation and malleability, which is another reason why I absolutely loved these. This character and this character are amazing to me, and I hope they do a lot more of this. I do like the idea about this, and I did go out of my way to buy the Viking He-Man and whatnot twice so that I could get both display options, because I think that that's fantastic. But this book starts the process of just another Barbara Gordon roller coaster, where by the end of it, they put like her and Jason Todd together, kind of. Or rather, they started a whole love question. And for me, Barbara Gordon, Batgirl, does not date Jason Todd. She does not screw Jason Todd. She does not kiss Jason Todd. She does not play with the concept of being with Jason Todd. It's not for me. It's not a thing that I can get behind. Now, if we were going to answer another question about that, if we were going to talk about the whole Batman, Batgirl thing, that's a topic for a completely different video. No, I'm not for it. That's also not another thing that I think that they should do. But I will say there is a little bit of a difference there, because I knew from day one, the introduction of Batgirl, I knew from day one that given the team that was working on Batman the Animated Series, headed by Bruce Timm, if I'm not mistaken, wanted that to happen. I knew from day one it was going to happen. By the second episode that she appeared in, if we count the first one as a two-parter and make it one episode, by the second episode, the second appearance of Batgirl, she was already making out with Batman on a rooftop. Literally by her second appearance. So I knew, even back then, that they were pushing for it. And then there was the Batwoman movie, and I knew they were pushing for it. And I knew that they were insinuating that it already happened. And then Batman Beyond comes, and evidently they've already had a relationship. And I'm like, guys, come on. And then they drop that movie on us, and they're like, here it is, it happened. I'm not a fan of it, but I can't believe that people were surprised by it. Because when I saw that movie, and I saw them start doing that thing on that rooftop, that unquestionable, unmoral thing, I said, well, he did it. He got exactly what he was shooting for from the very beginning. They always wanted that. He or they always wanted that, and they got it. And they played the long game on it, but they got exactly what they wanted, and they'd always intended to put those two together in a slimy, nasty, questionably ethical embrace. And they did it. And I'm not surprised. And in the Bruce Timm-esque universe of DC, that's very much a thing, and we all saw it coming, or we should have saw it coming. Kind of shame on you if you didn't see that as a possibility. But in comic books, there are certain things that you should be careful about, and relationships don't just define a shipping, they define the characters at their core. Who we choose to be with says something about us. And her with Jason Todd says something about the character and puts it into even more of a roller coaster, because then by the end of the book, if I'm not mistaken, she goes from kissing and the possibility to this is never going to happen, don't even worry about it type of thing. And now I'm like, she's a mess. It turns her into an absolute mess. And she's already kind of a mess with the roller coaster of her character through the New 52. And I don't think she got that much better in terms of her roller coaster-esqueness in Rebirth. I think it settled out a little bit towards the second main run of the character in Rebirth. But for me, I think the Three Jokers just kind of hurts a character that I really cared for while she was already damaged, and doesn't do her any favors, and doesn't necessarily do Jason Todd any favors, and the story of the Three Jokers doesn't exactly stay in the main continuity and change the universe. It doesn't really matter necessarily, and just overall, in a way, I think it might even bother me a little bit. I don't know. I'm going to read through it one more time, but I'm pretty sure this is gone. I'm pretty sure of that. So going on from that, we have Bomb Queen. This is the only one of these that I have, and I considered getting the second one a couple of times, but I have never done it. Bomb Queen stays because it was the first time that I found comic books that were like way adult. Like way more adult than I knew that comic books could even be, and it kind of opened up my idea as to what comic books were, and took them out of just for kids for me, and I started discovering that there were all kinds of comic books outside of superheroes that did all kinds of things. This is a Newsweek special Bruce Lee anniversary book. I keep it because every now and then I thumb through it just for the fun of it. This is Civil War, Marvel Civil War. I do tend to keep that, and I read it every now and then. This monstrosity here is the ridiculous Crisis on Infinite Earths. I don't read this often, but I do read it. I enjoy it quite a bit, actually. So moving on from there, we have Daredevil. This is the Man Without Fear book. This is Deceased. I enjoyed that quite a bit. Death of Wolverine. we might pull this book. I actually think this is overrated. And he didn't stay dead because characters don't stay dead. And I think this one is done. Fathom was another one of those books that kind of woke me up to the idea that comics could be like gritty and adult and have an art style that was very provocative, and just, it kind of woke me up to things like Witchblade and Vampirella and things of that nature that I enjoy quite a bit now, really digging into the fantasy of it. I really do like that book quite a bit. This is cool. This book is just cool. It is huge too. This is my Golden Age DC huge book right here. It is really awesome. It has all kinds of cool stuff in it and whatnot. But this was given to me by a person at my job because they just knew that I enjoyed comic books and they thought that I would enjoy it. And the very idea that somebody like cared enough to just be like, Bill would enjoy this, I thought that was cool. And yes, we need to clean this actually just as well. That's another thing that this whole thing is about. This is a 75-year collection of Green Lantern, different stories, which then leads into this, which is, this might be going. I like Green Lantern a lot. It was my favorite superhero for a good deal, but I think that in all honesty, the early stories are pretty bad, and this doesn't exactly hold up to anything today. I might use it as an adult coloring book, honestly. Because a long time ago, I kind of started the process of color pencils, and I was just going to color the whole thing, and then I never really did it. That's probably what I'm going to do with this, is repurpose it as an adult coloring book just for my own stuff. So let's see. That's Green Lantern Earth 1. That stays. See, now we're getting into Green Lantern stuff that's going to stay, because that's No Fear. That definitely stays. That's Rebirth. That definitely stays. Here's the Sinestro Core War. Definitely something that we hang on to. This is Rage of the Red Lanterns. This is War of the Green Lanterns. This is War of the Green Lanterns again, which this is the aftermath of that entire thing. And then we have Green Lantern Sinestro. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 volumes of the DC 52, the new 52 run, which is kind of where I really jumped into Green Lantern hard and then dove back into this stuff. So then going from there, this is the Green Lantern New Guardians. I only have 1 volume, and I'd honestly like to read the rest of it, so I do keep that. This is Green Lantern Rise of the Third Army. It's collection from the different things that were running at the time. Some of it appears in here, but it's not complete. It's missing parts like the Sinestro books and whatnot that take place during it and things like that. So these two I keep because they're more complete stories and I can just run through and watch the entire thing when I want. And this is Lights Out, which is pretty much the end of the new 52 run. Personally, for me, it pretty much set the standard that we were about to jump into a new wave in the new 52, which of course goes into Godhead, which is when they fought the new gods and things like that. This is the Lost Army. It's pretty much what leads into Rebirth. This is pretty much the end of the new 52 era and what led into Rebirth, if I'm remembering it correctly. All of this Green Lantern stuff was solid. It was all really good. This was a fantastic run of books, and I keep it for that reason. Harley Quinn. This is rough. Really, really, really rough. Harley Quinn is never not a back and forth with me. Like, ever. I constantly go from being appreciative and liking Harley Quinn to being downright irritated by Harley Quinn all the time. This is another one of those characters that seems roller coaster to me, but not like Batgirl. See, Harley Quinn changes erratically from villain to tragic person, to hero, to crazy, to comedy, to fourth wall breaking, it's like they don't know what to do with her. Ever. And then there's different interpretations of her all inside the same concepts. Like, here she very much plays a lot like the Harley Quinn that we know from the animated series. But they kind of mature her a bit to kind of bring her into comic books, and that's fine. But I'll probably read this one more time and be done with it. Because I just don't care. But, on the other hand, Harleen is fantastic. And is one of the best, if not the very best, Harley book I have ever read. I've read this 3 different times since I got it. And I will read it again. And then probably again. And then probably again. Because it is that good. The artwork is phenomenal. The adult nature and mature content of the story is phenomenal. The believable aspect of her falling to the Joker is handled terrifically. The idea that she very blatantly knows that she's walking down a very, very dark path is amazing. It is, quite frankly, exactly what we needed from an actual movie. Had we done Joker and then done something akin to this for the next movie, a Harleen movie, instead of what we got with her being a very animated tee character, because that's what we got when they just introduced her in Suicide Squad, and they basically jumped this point because I don't know why. I don't know why DC chose to do its movies the way they did. Had they taken their time, introduced one character at a time, ran with movies that built a narrative, yes, it would have taken them a good 5 to 6 years to hit a big DC Justice League movie, but it would have paid off. Let's be honest here. The Avengers movie is not necessarily a good movie. I know. That's going to make some people mad, but standing alone, without the backing of everything that came before it, if they just dropped you into an Avengers movie, I don't feel that it would fare all that much better than the DC movie did. I still think it's better than that DC Justice League movie, by far. But I also feel like we're unable to remove ourselves from the content that we've already watched building up to that. So they didn't have to introduce a bunch of people or set up a bunch of stuff. They just assumed that you'd already watched the other movies, and we did, and then we jump into that, and all this stuff is a much bigger deal to us because these characters have already been developed and they've already been pushed in a way that make us go, oh, this is cool, and this is a thing, and oh my god, that means so much to him. And that's brilliant. It's a movie that feeds into a movie that feeds into a movie that feeds into a movie. It's kind of like Star Trek films. After a while, you get a feeling for who these characters are. So they don't have to go back over that and really push the idea that that's what these characters are. They just tell the story of the movie. And for people on the outside that jump into the movie, if the movie's narrative is not sound enough, it turns out to be a pretty bad movie. But if you already know the characters, movies even like Star Trek V, and I said that, even like Star Trek V, is actually a decent Star Trek movie. It is. Look at all the episodes of Star Trek that we watch, and look at all the people that just will watch the entire season of The Next Generation and things like that, or watch the entire season of TOS, and they'll just watch the whole season, even though they know there are certain episodes that are not top 10 episodes. They're just like, okay. They just kind of happen and they pass you by, and you're like, that was a little Star Trek story. But what pulls those stories along? The characters. And Star Trek V has legit character moments and even a little bit of character study that you can get behind. Does it drop the ball and do some dumb shit like all of a sudden Scotty is dating Uhura? Yeah. But eh. And the reason I is because the original Star Trek was very malleable anyways, and a lot of the things that happened didn't really move on to the next thing. So because of that, if we're going to allow that with the original series, and we already know that the characters are basically on an automatic reset button all the time, sure, the movies tried to force a little continuity, but whatever. It's very obvious by the next movie that they've just all of a sudden hit the reset button and like that thing evidently isn't going on or didn't go on. They just forget it. They just leave it behind in movie 6. So if we're just going to do that, I can even really overlook that because they did crap like that in the original series all the time. So, it's the characters that pull you through, that make it a big deal. And had they built the characters before they did things like Suicide Squad or Justice League, those probably had a real chance at being a good movie because we'd already know the characters and we'd just really be looking for the character moments we cared about in the series. And that's just the way that is. So this book stays as both one of the best Harley stories. Actually, I think this is the best Harley story that has ever been written, as well as stays because I'm telling you beyond the shadow of a doubt that when I stop and think about it, this is an absolute study piece for how the MCU works and how the DC movie universe doesn't. Okay, so let's get an end to this. Let's finish this off. This is Infinite Crisis. It's a decent story. I read it every now and then. It's not one of my top 10 or anything like that, but I do enjoy it quite a bit. This is the Infinity Gauntlet, and for anybody that's watched the MCU that never read this book, read this book. You may have a deeper appreciation for that movie, and you may also learn some things and maybe even get into some characters that you're not really into yet. The Justice League Origin book for the New 52 was solid, and every single one of the Justice League-esque books after that are the same level of solid. They are self-contained little stories that kind of hit at major continuity, but for the most part are just telling fantastic DC stories. And you know what? I am okay with that to the point where I could pick up any one of these and just read them, and that's all. I just read them. I don't have to worry about what came before or what happens after, because they're fairly well self-contained little narratives. And that's that. Now, the only thing left for me to do here is to wipe down the shelf and finish it off. That's it. I'm going to dust it, I'm going to wipe it, I'm going to spray it down, I'm going to clean it all up from one side to the other, make it nice and presentable, and the next time we come in to do one of the shelves, we will be pulling everything off the gaming shelf so that we can drop it down a peg. But this book, the books on this side of the wall, all these books that are left, they mean something to me. They are worth keeping in every single aspect. They are good stories, they are solid narratives, they are things that I will read again, and they are stuff, stories, ideas that mean something personally to me. And in the end, collecting, as I've said many, many times, these items should mean something to you personally. And if they don't, why do you have them? Later on. I have spoken. Take what you will from it.